And so because they have a lot of that decision-making power, one principal may opt to not have in-person visitors while another may opt to have in-person visitors. So the moral of the story here, as is with most things, is check with your schools, check with your partners, see what they're thinking, see what they're feeling, and be ready to adjust. I think we are approaching, as we reach kind of this new Delta variant, a place where we could be pretty fluid once again. And so we could be doing some flip-flopping even between in-person and virtual, and preparing for both of those, continuing to cultivate communication and relationships with your school partners is going to be really important. Boom.
Okay, so what is the plan or protocol for field trips this year? In regards to field trips, we are still waiting on official guidance from CPS. However, the travel ban that was implemented at the start of the pandemic was lifted on June 28th. So we are anticipating that there should be some opportunity for field trips. However, once again, we are still waiting on specific guidelines and what safety protocols will be put in place for those field trips. As soon as CPS has released guidance, our teams will be elevating the information on our website, social media, and newsletters. So don't worry, we'll keep you in the loop.
Okay, thank you, Anna. I think Nyla, you're up here. Nyla, I think you're muted.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, so the question is, will CPS require proof of vaccination for in-person programming? The answer is no. At this time, there is no requirement that anyone be vaccinated when working with CPS or entering a CPS building. However, if you are a partner that will enter CPS every day before you enter a building, you will be asked to fill out a health screener. At that time, you will list all the CPS buildings that you will be entering for the day. The screener will also ask you a series of questions, including whether or not you are experiencing any symptoms of COVID-19, as well as any recent travel or exposure to COVID-19. From there, when you get to the building, they will confirm that you have filled out the screener for the building specifically, and they will also take your temperature. This way, if there is an outbreak in the school, they'll be able to trace every building and person that has been in and notify others that may have come in contact with the person reporting the case. For more information about this and health screening, you can click on the link that should be posted right now in the chat. And yeah, that answers that question.
All right.
Tier status. Do we need to apply? Do we need to reapply for tier status this school year, or does it carry over? If you had your tier status last year, it will continue to be the same this year. As of right now, you do not have to reapply. It will carry over. As a vendor, just so everyone knows that you, as a vendor, you are assigned a tier 0, 1, or 2 status, and the default being tier 0. So if you want to work with students, you would need to be a tier 1 or a tier 2. If you are unsure of your tier status, please contact procurement. They are the folks to go to with questions, and we will drop that in the chat. If you want a different status, you will have to have a principal complete a tier change request form. So most likely you will go to the partner, to a school that you worked with last year who sponsored you, possibly to fill out that form. We do have a video that explains the tier status, so we'll put this in the chat as well and encourage you to watch the video.
That's me, attestation. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, hi everybody. The question is, slide 4. Okay, the new CPS attestation process has been confusing. what might help with this process moving forward. Y'all, it is a complicated process. I'm not going to walk you through it right now, but I'm going to give you the resources you need to help move you forward. So I am going to drop in the chat the FAQ on attestation. Okay, I'm dropping that right now. Here you go. And we also have a video tutorial. Dropping that now. Boom. The biggest thing though is to make sure that your vendor information is up to date with CPS. If you reach out to procurement directly, make sure that they have your updated information and personal contact for that vendor number, then you are much more likely to get updated information when needed and for them to return any inquiries you have. So make sure that your information is updated with procurement at CPS. Next.
And just to clarify really quickly, that information should be updated in iSupplier. So if in the system your contact is not up to date, then it's possible that procurement will see that as an inactive account. So it's important, like Annie was saying, to make sure that that information is updated. And just going back, procurement hasn't kind of done a database sweep or cleaning in a long time. And so this was initiated as a means to make things run more efficiently. However, there is just a lot of initial admin and upkeep involved. So it's really important to make sure that your correct contact information, the person that handles your background checks, your insurance, that they're going in and updating their contact info in iSupplier so that the correct person is receiving the information. That's it. Okay.
Okay, vendor status. This is a question we heard a lot this week. We heard a lot of questions just about the vendor status. And so two of the big questions are, one, who should you email to determine if your vendor number is still active? So if you have questions about your vendor number, your vendor status, you will email procurement. Second, does partnership, your vendor status, does it lapse? If you do not submit a PO or no cost agreement within 15 months, yes, it will lapse. But within that 15 months, even if it's one PO or one no cost agreement, that will keep you active. If you are unsure of your status, again, email procurement. Procurement is the name of the game.
All right, this is me, background checks. So the question we got is on the next slide, and I will read it to you. And that question is, do partners who cleared a CPS background check prior to the pandemic have to re-fingerprint this year? So if you watched our back to school video on background checks, you will have seen that the guidance that we understand to be true is that if you've gotten a clear check summer 2018 or sooner, meaning closer to right now, I'm going to drop the video for the background check video link here. I've said video a lot. If you got the clear from September, summer 2018 to sooner, then you should not need to get re-fingerprinted. However, if you want to be sure and you want to double check, you should email backgroundchecks@cps.edu. This is really important because if you are someone who works at multiple agencies, multiple organizations, you need to get background checked, thank you, Courtney, for each agency that you work for. So you can't go into a school under the Joffrey Ballet background check that you got figured out and then try to do that with like Looking Glass, for example. So please be sure that you double check that. But the information we have is that from summer 2018 or sooner, you should not need to get re-fingerprinted, but email backgroundchecks@cps.edu for questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Robin. Okay, so these questions coming up are specifically for our arts partners out there. So the first question is regarding the Arts Partner RFQ. So my organization was awarded an Arts Partner RFQ, congrats, but has not received any follow-up on next steps. What is the current guidance? So if you have been awarded an Arts Partner RFQ, please know that the CPS Department of Arts Education, including Jeff Roxa and Julia DeBettencourt, are working closely with procurement as we speak to get the next steps finalized and answer your questions about the marketplace and how to list programs in the marketplace and get your login credentials. And they're working with procurement to kind of finalize those next steps, and they're pushing every single week to get those answers so that they can communicate with you. So as soon as they finalize those steps, you will receive notification from them. But right now, there's nothing that you need to do. So at this time, don't feel like you need to reach out or do anything. They will reach out to you as soon as those next steps are finalized. And they are working on it. It is a priority. Okay. This next question has to do with the Creative Schools Fund. So last year, due to COVID-19, you had a rolling grant submission process for the Creative Schools Fund. Will there be this kind of flexibility this year? So I want to start off by saying that the Creative Schools Fund guidelines for school year 21-22 have been released, and we have announced new grant goals, an updated grant process, a new timeline that aligns the fund more closely with the Creative School certification. And partners, just so you know, will still play a really important role within these new strategies. So I'm going to share those new guidelines with you in the chat here, and then I'm going to continue. So check those guidelines out there. Now to answer the question. So this year, there won't be a rolling application system, and that's essentially just because it requires a lot of capacity to administer applications on an ongoing basis. But there will be 2 application periods this school year. So applications for the first round are opening soon on August 30th, and that round will go until October. And then the second application period will run from December 2021 to February 2022. And just to provide a little bit of more information, the fund does unite public, institutional, and individual funding sources. And also, just as a bit of news, Ingenuity just entered into a 5-year partnership with Lollapalooza for $2.2 million. And these funds will go towards the Creative Schools Fund to support teacher designed and led arts projects and partnerships within schools. So in the guidelines that I dropped in the chat, you can also find information about upcoming Creative Schools Fund informational sessions and office hours. So plan on attending those so that you can better understand all of these changes. Thank you.
Okay, volunteers. So even before we get to this question, I will just say that there is specific sort of a narrow pathway for volunteers in providing services in CPS schools. So I'm going to drop in here a resource that CIS of Chicago created to sort of try to help understand vendor versus volunteer, what's the story? So the question here though is what's next after filling out our paperwork to become a volunteer? So on that resource, you'll see who's sort of in charge of green lighting whomever, whether it be for a vendor or a volunteer. For the volunteer process, as part of that application, you indicate what schools you are intending to volunteer for. The person at the school who gets that information is whomever has been designated as their volunteer liaison, somebody of that nature that then looks at that information and contacts you if there are any questions or anything needed, but they basically then green light that. So the person that is green lighting you is at the school of which you indicated that you intend to volunteer at. So that is what happens. The resource I dropped in there has some other detailed information about that process and hopefully is clear for y'all. But again, volunteers, no money is exchanging hands is a big part of that, but there's sort of some narrow pathways. We invite you to take a look at those.
Okay, so I think concludes our round of FAQ highlights. Those were our greatest hits. So I'm going to hand it off to Nyla, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what's next.
All righty. Okay, guys, it's about that time where we want to hear from all of you, and any final questions that you might have for us. You can submit the questions using the following link in the chat. And this time you'll also be able to upvote other people's questions as well. And now we'll go ahead and take the top 3 to 5 questions, depending on the time we have left here. And yeah.
Great. So I just dropped the link in the chat. You can go ahead and submit your questions via that link. And then I'll do a little bit of, screen sharing and show you kind of what the top questions are here. So we'll have all hands on deck for this. Just give me one moment. I'm gonna. Are you seeing the correct window, the Q&A?
Yep,
Just-
it's coming up, Courtney.
I'm sorry?
It's coming up.
Okay, great. So as soon as those questions start coming in, we should see them populate onto the screen. Is everyone having an okay time accessing the link? If not, just let me know.
I mean, it's possible that we just did an amazing job and nobody has any questions.
Oh, we have a question. Great. Okay, we're going to hold off a little bit more for some other questions to kind of populate in there and allow people to upvote on questions as well. So you can use that arrow on the side of the questions to upvote. Okay, so we have a lot on, oh yes, this one is very popular here. As you can see, we have 4 people that want to know, with the possibility of in-person instruction resuming, what are ways students can safely work in pairs or groups in the classroom? Jess, I'm wondering if you can help us out a little bit here with this question.
So I'll just state, it's not a possibility, it is happening. In person, students will be in person 5 days a week. With that being said, I know that there will be still some sort of grouping, podding structure. It won't be as intense as it was during the hybrid period in the spring, but students will still be sort of socially distanced by 3 feet is what the CDC guidelines recommend, and which is what CPS will be doing, and required to wear masks. Masks will be required when doing performing arts as well, so playing musical instruments or singing. So you will still be, you know, those guidelines will still be there. How you can work safely in pairs or groups, that's going to be something you're going to have to probably work closely with your classroom teacher with, as well as the school administration, because as noted earlier by Nicole, principals are going to make their own decisions for their own communities, and in a classroom, teacher's going to, you know, help guide their individual classrooms along as well. So certainly work with your classroom teachers and school leaders to make those decisions. More guidance will go out to principals as we get closer to the the start of school, and they'll have more very specific guidance from the Office of Student Health and Wellness on some of these more very specific safety protocols.
Awesome, thank you so much. Another question about in school. So will students still be on individual laptops and devices in each classroom like they were this spring? Is there any guidance on what a hybrid program might be possible with students in school and facilitators remotely?
Do you want me to respond to that, Courtney?
Yeah, that would be great.
So right now there isn't a hybrid model that's moving forward in classrooms. Students will be there 5 days a week full time. Regarding whether partnerships will be remote or in person, I think you'll see that teachers will work that out individually in classrooms. And again, principals will make the decision whether they want virtual partnerships or in-person partnerships in their school, or a mix of both. We're advocating that virtual partnerships are important and want them to still be able to take place. So I think you're going to see a lot less of students sitting at a desk on a laptop, because there won't be simultaneous teaching going on, because students will be in the classroom full time.
Can I just jump in?
Jess,
Rebecca?
isn't it?
Oh, go on, whoever was speaking.
Oh, it's me, Robin. I
Hi.
was just going to say that I wanted to confirm with Jess that it's my understanding that it's also the school's discretion, the principal's discretion, if they're moving to a one-to-one environment, which I know some schools are because of having gone from remote learning and passing out devices, that some students will all have access to a device. So that just might contribute to a school's ability to be able to provide some kind of, or classroom's ability to provide some kind of remote partner program.
Yeah, that's.
And I was just going to chime in and say, I think, and I don't want to speak, Rebecca, was that your question? I feel like it was, around hybrid being less about where the students are and more about where the facility, like who's like the partner, right? Are they going to be on a
Yes,
screen in
correct.
front of the classroom, or are students going to be individually engaging with that live virtual program on their devices? Is that right, Rebecca?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Sorry, I worded it weirdly.
I got you. I was inside your brain. I think Jess still answered that question, but I just wanted to clarify for others.
Thank you, Robin and Jess.
Could you
Okay.
repeat that answer?
Oh.
For clarification, was it that we don't have definitive, or each principal decides?
I think you're going to see a classroom teacher may have like a projection set up in their room. And so they may, if you're doing a virtual partnership, they may just have you on the screen in front of their classroom. Or if their students have individual laptops, they may work that way. I think it's going to really vary from classroom to classroom and then school to school as well.
If it's helpful, I'll just chime in. CIS of Chicago surveyed all of our partner schools. We work with 175 schools, and the vast majority of respondents said that they are planning to work with partners, both in live virtual settings and in person. That's the goal.
Okay, so the next question here, any suggestions on best practices for communicating with and receiving timely responses from CPS procurement, background checks, etc.? Are there any tips or suggestions?
This one's always a tricky one. Lots of patience. So, something to keep in mind, procurement and background checks are both incredibly overwhelmed, especially right now. These next few weeks, they will be getting a lot of requests for people gearing back up to get back into classrooms and to start working again with schools. We did see a lot of partners take a bit of a break last year, and so a lot of them are doing background checks this right now, and so there's a little bit of a backlog at Accurate Biometrics by like about 3-week turnaround time is what I'm seeing from some folks. I know that it's incredibly frustrating when you reach out to procurement and you feel like you don't hear back for a week. They answer all their questions in the order they receive them. And so they won't sort of jump the line for someone and push off other folks. It's literally them just waiting until they get to your question in their queue. And I know it's incredibly frustrating. The best way to reach procurement is through the procurement request form and to explain your question. That, or if you have an ongoing conversation through email with somebody because you're working through an attestation issue or some sort of payment thing, continue to email with that through that exchange. That's going to be your best way, and because they're doing that directly through the supplier account system that they utilize within our Oracle system. And so they're going in there and they're seeing your request in the system, and then they're responding to you that way. So keep that conversation live and like don't let them go, because that's how you can keep communicating with them. But also that form, I know sometimes you fill it out and it takes a week for them to respond, but that's about the turnaround time they have, especially as things get closer to school and more folks are getting busier and busier.
Tess, can I also just hop in and say, you know, even when I've heard from you, Jess, that even when you and your team is reaching out to procurement, that you also are not getting prompt responses. So I just also wanted to highlight this is happening internally at CPS as well as with external vendors and folks trying to engage with procurement. So there is a big lag time for all folks who are trying to get to them, not just partners.
Okay, so the next question here, if we apply for Creative Schools funds in December, can the project period be February to June of 2022? So in looking at the guidelines, if you are applying during that second period in the winter, there is an optional planning and activities through June of 2022. So primarily planning, but you can have some related activities. And then activities should just conclude by December of 2022 or June 2023. So I guess there's an option.
What you'll see, I'll just hop in there, Courtney, and I would encourage you, Joanne, thanks for that question, to look at the guidelines more closely. This is actually a hugely exciting shift and one that partners have been asking for many, many, many years. And so you'll see two different kind of cadence periods now to the fund. And one of them, one of the grant application periods actually allows for kind of beginning of the school year programs to be happening, not just programs that start after January in the second semester. There's also some opportunities to run from one school year into the next. So Courtney was kind of saying some of that can be used as planning time, that then come fall, you are ready to roll. So it's a hugely exciting shift and something that I think and I hope that partners will be really excited about as well.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, I think we have time for a couple more questions here. And then we're going to take a break. And then we're going to come back and do a little bit of networking just to give you a little bit of an arc here. So let's take a look at a couple more that we have going on here. Is after school arts programming happening? And are there still issues with the inequity of fines or penalties for late pickup or working parents? Jess or anyone else have insights on this? This might be something we need to flag, but.
Because we have a department called Out of School Time that that manages all the after school programming, whether it's arts or SEL. If it's after school, it sort of gets pulled out of our department's purview and like put into OST. There is an OST delegated account. There's like a version of me over in OST and a great manager over there who's amazing and could probably better answer this question. There will be after school programming happening. There was in the spring, so I know that piece, but I don't know a lot about the second part to that question. I've never actually heard of that, but I also don't work in the after school area, so I can't exactly answer that question. But I can try to find that delegated email account and put that into the chat for folks.
Great. And once again, we are recording all of these questions. So if we don't have the answers right now, check back on our back to school webpage. We're going to be putting a list of all the questions from throughout the week, and we're going to be entering in responses as well. So check back on our webpage soon. Okay. So next here, what if we are a vendor that brings volunteers into schools? Do all of our volunteers need to follow the CPS volunteer process? Robin, I don't know if you want to.
I mean, the short answer is yes. There has to be some sort of record of each volunteer having been background checked either through level 1 or level 2, depending on what that pathway is. So again, it's a narrow pathway. CPS's expectation is that vendors are coming into the building and that they have been fully background checked and that there is either a no cost agreement or a PO or some paper trail of that. But without knowing the specifics of your exact program, short answer, yes.
Okay, and we'll take just one more here before we move on. And once again, we're recording all these questions. So just because we're not getting to it right now, doesn't mean that we're not going to respond to it. We will indeed have a list of all questions and working to implement responses to those on the webpage. So do you work with CPS and charter schools? I'm assuming you mean for partners, and yes, partners can also include charter schools. I don't know if anyone wants to add on to that at all.
Do you have like, I know like at Michelle Clark, there's a person designated at that school as a contact person. Do you have that type of connection as well with the charter schools?
Shamika, are you specifically talking about communities and schools, student sports manager?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so we can talk a little bit more about that, but yes, we do partner with charter schools, and yes, we do have some intensive schools that are charter schools.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We're going to get the slides back up there for you. Thank you for participating in the Q&A portion. And once again, we're going to get those questions and answers up on the webpage. So do tune back in soon. Okay. So hoping that this was helpful and provided some additional insights for you. In a moment, we're going to go on a brief 5-minute break and gear up for some rapid networking rounds. So we're very much hoping that you'll stay with us, but if virtual networking isn't really your thing, we understand, but we really would like you to stay. But you're welcome to step out a little bit early if need be, and we hope to see you again soon. For those brave and social souls out there, hold tight for a moment and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. So that would be about 11:28, 29, something around there, for some rapid rounds of networking. And we're super excited about this. But once again, I hope that we've answered at least some of your questions throughout the week, that this little Q&A period was helpful, and we'll get some more of those questions up on our webpage and continue to update as we get more information and as guidelines and protocols get released. So thank you so much for your patience, for your understanding, and for your communication. We see you, we appreciate you, and once again, we're all in this together. So thank you.